influencing popular culture, politics, and everything in between. The local station takes you ringside as we discuss the crazy world that is professional wrestling. This is Going Ringside with the local station.
Hello and welcome to Going Ringside. I'm your host, Scott Johnson. So glad you could be with us today, and I'm very, very excited about this episode. So often we talk about, the drama in the wrestling world and talk to the biggest stars on the planet. But this episode, we're going into the world of the movies. Emily Rickards stars as Mildred Burke in the movie Queen of the Ring. So who is Mildred Burke? So I'm a longtime wrestling fan. I know a lot of the old ones. Mildred Burke was a name I'd heard of, but I didn't quite understand who she was. When I thought of old-time women wrestlers, I thought of Moolah, I thought of Mae Young. Obviously, they were famous in our generation coming back in the Attitude Era. But there was a woman who trailblazed ahead of all of them. That was this woman, Mildred Burke. And now this blockbuster movie is coming out titled Queen of the Ring that shows her story back in the early to mid 1900s that really changed the face of wrestling for women forever. It is a story that needed to be told. It is a story, the new trailer's out for the movie, which debuts March 7th in select theaters around the country. Let's check out the latest trailer.
Oh, honey.
I had a bad dream.
Only dreams that we make come true, are we? We're gonna wish away all those bad thoughts. 1, 2, 3.
I promise you, my son, our lives together will be special.
Where's your little boy's father, anyway?
Mister, I ain't gonna marry no circus freak.
He done let me over this.
Billy Wolf! I'm really curious to see what you can do with her.
You barely know him. He's the only man that's ever believed in my dream.
We got a job to do tonight. You're out there, you wrestle your heart out.
Women can headline arenas. I know that we can.
I want to talk to you about putting 2 of my girls on your card.
My main event is heavyweights and their name.
Why would anyone want to limit the spectacle of competition based on gender?
Looks like we're cleaning up every night of the week now. It's got me thinking, Billy.
I want us secure as equal partners.
Then do what's right for business.
Honor the deal or we shoot.
You will do what I say, or you will find yourself cleaning toilets in some arena after my show comes through.
Ma, all the tickets you 2 ever sold had your name on them, not his.
Mr. McMahon.
How can I get a guarantee that my ladies can wrestle in the state of New York?
Let's show them how we do it in the South.
Get up. Remember. 1, 2.
I'm actually the highest paid female athlete.
In Washington.
In history.
I saw this as a wrestling fan. My mind was blown. What Queen of the Ring is going to bring to the world, to tell them the story of how women's wrestling in the United States really began on the back of that woman, Mildred Burke. And it's interesting because you'll see a lot of famous faces from the wrestling world in this movie, including Camille, including Trinity Fatu or Naomi, including Toni Storm. Even if you look closely in one of the trailers, you see the face of Jim Cornette. So there are some famous wrestling faces in this movie, as you would expect in a great movie like this. It is a biopic kind of following the same trend we saw, the one about the Von Erichs that came out about a year ago that did tremendous business. So who do we have on the show today? The producer and the director are joining us for this episode to break down everything you need to know about this movie, which once again comes out March 7th. Then a little later on, friend of the show, Victoria Crawford, a woman wrestler herself, will join us to talk about the impact of a movie like this going up on the big screen. So let's get to it. Here's the producer and the director from the new movie, Queen of the Ring. Well, we're excited right now to be joined by the team who really has put all this together. Amy Schoaf is a producer on the movie, and Ash Avildsen is the director-producer on this movie. Both of you, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Queen of the Ring. I'm a longtime wrestling fan. I've heard of Mildred Burke. I know she's before my time. She's before most people's time. Talk to me a little about this project and how you decided to, come up with the idea to make a movie about her.
I'm friends with Jim Ross, who's a beloved WWE Hall of Famer.
We've had Jim on the show. I know Jim, yes.
So I called Jim and said that I wanted to make a 80s period fictional wrestling movie and have him involved with it, since he's lived it, and have it be as authentic as possible. And I felt that like there really wasn't a movie, especially something in that time frame, that was pro wrestling but had an inspirational, triumphant ending. I love The Wrestler by Aronofsky. Of course, that's all about the decay of a wrestler. So I called Jim and was like, would you work on this with me? And he said, yeah, I'd love to. By the way, do you know who Mildred Burke is? And I said, I never heard of her. And he said, well, I want you to check out this book, Queen of the Ring. I always felt like it should be a movie. Let me know what you think. I read the book that weekend. I called him Monday morning. I said, forget about the 80s fictional thing. We have to tell this woman's story. This is incredible. And I was pretty like mad at not just myself, but kind of like my whole pro wrestling community in general, that I didn't know who she was. And none of my immediate friends who were longtime diehard wrestling fans knew who she was either. And this was actually right before, maybe about a year before she got put into the Hall of Fame in WWE. So she wasn't even in the Hall of Fame yet at the time that JR told me about the book. But yeah, that's how it was. Luckily I called JR to ask him to work on a fictional wrestling movie with me. He told me about the book. I fell in love with it. And then the rest is history.
And she was, I think it was Depression era when she was wrestling. I know the name. So if I understand right, she trained the Fabulous Moolah. And I assume she overlapped with Mae Young, who are two people of our generation would know.
Yeah. So Francesca Eastwood plays Mae Young in the film, and she has a very prominent role. And then we have Mickie James playing the Fabulous Moolah, but unfortunately we cut out all the dialogue in her scene where we established that she was Moolah, mainly just because we felt it was going to be confusing to all the audience that isn't a diehard wrestling fan of like, wait, now I have to memorize another woman wrestler when we had just introduced a couple others not long before that in the story.
And that's hard for me because I am the diehard. So for me, it makes sense, but you have to speak to the general audience.
Yeah. Right. And it was a drag because Mickie James was great. And she still does her move in the ring and she's still in the scene. But we just don't establish that she's Moolah through dialogue, which we have it shot. It'll probably come out as a deleted scene or director's cut, or maybe we'll do something on social media and show the scene to show, that Mickie did a great job of why we chose to remove it. But yeah, Moolah was trained under Mildred and Billy. And they touch a little bit about that in a Dark Side of the Ring episode, which I'm sure any wrestling fans watching probably are already very familiar with the show. But if you're not, it's on Vice. And there's an episode on Moolah, and it goes in a little bit to Millie.
This part I love, and I want to talk about more. But Amy, I want to get to you real quickly. Talk to me about the release, where to find it, what you guys have been doing. Because I know in our neck of the woods, because you're from Jacksonville like I am, that's where our show's based out of.
Yes,
you just had a showing of it in St. Augustine. Talk to me about the dynamic of the rollout for the movie.
Yeah, we're excited. We're actually opening in theaters across the country on March 7th, which is Women's Month. And we do plan on opening it here in Jacksonville, most likely at Regency. Regency theaters on that weekend. So that's exciting. But yeah, 750 to 1,000 screens across the country, and then maybe, more from there. So this is the beginning phase of marketing, advertising today. People Magazine dropped the latest trailer and poster art for the film, which is exciting. And it's the time that we just need to start getting the word out so that everyone's aware of it.
Now, I want to back up. Were either of you, now Ashley say you knew JR, were either of you really wrestling people before this? I mean, how did he even come up? Because when I think of all the types of genres of movie you could do, pro wrestling is not the first one that pops into my head.
Yeah, no, I'm a longtime fan. I remember the first time I discovered that there was more to the pro wrestling world other than what I saw on TV as a kid. I was in New York City for a week for some court things. And my mom said, hey, I got you tickets to see Ultimate Warrior and Undertaker in a body bag match in Madison Square Garden. And I said, I was like,
you're hitting me right here.
I thought you were pulling my leg because that wasn't a storyline on TV. I'm like, Mom, what are you talking about? There's no Ultimate Warrior Undertaker body bag match. I would know all about this because I was a huge Warrior and Undertaker fan. I was like, that's not real. You're confused. I just thought my mom was just being like a confused parent. And she goes, no, here you go. Here's the newspaper article. I got his tickets. And I looked and it was real, but it was a house show. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that house shows were a thing, which anyone watching a house show is the non-televised weekly shows that the wrestlers are doing on tour that you only get to see if you go to a live show. And so it was a house show. It was completely amazing. I still remember the end of the match. Taker was zipping him up, did the tombstone, going around the last corner. The arm comes out, shakes, the whole place erupts. And that was another thing that drew me to Mildred's story, was that she never was able to wrestle in New York City. And she never got to perform at MSG because of the women's wrestling ban that California and New York didn't remove it until 65 and 72. I never knew that as a diehard lifelong pro wrestling fan that women's wrestling was ever illegal in the U.S., much less having California and New York be the last two states.
This is the first I've ever heard of that. Really?
That's all in our story. Yeah, we talk all about that in the movie, and a bunch of other people. That's like the stories of the beginning of Gorgeous George and Babs Wingo and the number of girls. Yeah.
And I want to get your perspective on it. You mentioned Gorgeous George. In the modern era, people get so fixated on John Cena, Dwayne Johnson. These people were famous, and they are. They're global stars. Back then, and you mentioned Gorgeous George, he was arguably as famous as any of them. Did Mildred Burke deal with a lot of celebrity in her day?
Well, I don't want to spoil too much, but Gorgeous George does have an important role in the film, and George and Mildred were very good friends, and they really helped each other at different points in their career. Gorgeous George was the most famous wrestler, probably up until, as far as reaching that status, it probably wasn't until Hulk Hogan that someone reached that level of pop culture status. But Gorgeous George in the 50s, once it all became televised, he just completely revolutionized the business and really brought out the theatrical drama, and playing, such a colorful character. And what I didn't actually realize until I got more into Mildred's story and then subsequently dove in more into George's history, he was actually one of the big reasons a lot of people bought television when they first came out. They were calling them Georgie boxes. And he was actually one of the main reasons people were buying the TV sets just to see Gorgeous George. So, great character, great history. And he has a really exciting relationship with Mildred in the movie.
Yeah, as a child, both my grandmother and great-grandmother would tell me about Gorgeous George. So I kind of recognized at an early age. Talk to me about the stars in this. So you mentioned Mickie James. I think another one that you mentioned in past is Toni Storm in this?
Yeah, so Mickie James has a very small moment now that the Moolah scene got edited. Toni Storm does play Clara Mortensen, who was another real life wrestler that Mildred has a very pivotal feud with, where they do go into, not to get too much away, but they do go into shooting, which was shoot matches when the talent and the promoters and the manager couldn't agree on a finish. So there is real women's combat in the film that's also mixed with the scripted matches when everyone was working together. So Tony Storm plays Clara Mortensen, and then Kaylee Latimer, known as Camille, she played June Byers, which was very meta when we casted her because she was just breaking the June Byers' title reign in NWA today. That June was the longest running. She had a long NWA reign, and Camille actually broke that as she was being cast to play June. So that's a fun little.
Yeah, and it was her first acting role, and she did an amazing job. Yeah.
What were they liked it? I mean, what was it like for these wrestlers to come into your world?
I mean, they had a blast. I mean, they really like June. I mean, Camille did an amazing job. She has a very large role in the movie. I mean, they both did a great job. Yeah.
Yeah. And we wanted to make sure because the June Byers and Clara Mortensen, again, I don't want to give too much away, but those are very important matches in Mildred's story because of the shooting element. And we wanted to have real wrestlers do it because they did all their own stunts. And we just knew that the in-ring action had to be so authentic. And for a movie at this scope, being an independent production, we don't have the liberties to take tons and tons of time when there's action sequences, and having real wrestlers was a great decision. And you'll see that in the film, how authentic the in-ring action happens. It's because Tony and Kaylee are that good, and they did all their own stunts, and they were able to repeatedly take the bumps in the ring so that we could get all the coverage we need to then edit the scene together in the ring. So it's not just like a televised wrestling match, like it's still a cinematic film. So you want all these different angles. And, when you're shooting this stuff, you have to start again and reset. And Tony and Kaylee just took bump after bump, whether it was 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. And they put their bodies through such hell for us to be able to make the scenes the way we did. And I'm eternally in debt to them for being willing to do that. And luckily no one got injured and there were no, physical issues, but they were able to do that because they're professionals.
And Ash, I think we got you back. You got us okay?
Yeah, no, I think I was going to answer the question about if we didn't cast real pro wrestlers versus actors. I would never generalize all actors, but a lot of actors for the level of stunts in the ring doing the wrestling moves, a lot of them would want stunt doubles, understandably so. When you have to change stunt doubles in and out during scenes like that, everything takes a lot longer, and it's a lot more editing you have to do so that no one can tell that it's a stunt double being switched out for the main actor. So because they were playing the roles and also doing their own stunts as pro wrestlers, it made it so much more realistic for us to pull it off. So it's not to say that we couldn't have done it with, veteran actors, of course, but there's nothing will ever feel as, in my opinion, nothing will ever feel as truly fluid as if it's really the person doing it when it comes specifically to pro wrestling, because then you can just capture it at certain angles where you can show their face and their body taking the bump without having to cut around anything.
Right. And I just wanted to speak to Emily because she is our lead and how awesome she was. And she did come out 3 weeks early before shooting and trained and did a lot of her own stunts. There's only a few moves where they were like, she was doing flips.
I want to interrupt you there. Yeah. Tell me about Emily. Tell me who she is coming into your movie as a performer.
Yeah, well, Ash found, we looked at people and it was really about like body type, and we needed someone who was strong and looked the part and also was an amazing actress. And, she has a big following from Arrow. And she just, she really looked the part, and Ash reached out to her and she just loved it. And I think, we really got lucky with her. She really put everything into it. She did a diet and worked out and really prepped for the movie. And I think really, really embodied the role. Like she's fantastic in it. Yeah. I mean, she carried weights around with her on set every day. And like,
how did she learn what Mildred was like? Would you watch old film reels or what kind of studying?
There's very limited film on Mildred. That's also a big reason why she's been forgotten so much by culture and also even the pro wrestling industry is because when she peaked, it was right before everything turned into TV and into the Gorgeous George era, which was in the 50s. So most of her career was late 30s to early 50s. The main event that the film climaxes with was in 1954. So there's very limited of what to really see her doing, other than there is some wrestling. You're not really going to find like video interviews and stuff. There's a lot of photos that we got from the family as well from the book. There's an unpublished manuscript that she wrote, an autobiography that we were able to get copies of from Mildred's granddaughter that we also gave to Emily. But a lot of it was just, following your intuition and everything you could take that was out there in Mildred. But there was no it's not like playing, like the Iron Claw, for instance, great movie. There was more tape out there of the Von Erichs because they were big, in the 70s and 80s. Mildred, we didn't have that luxury. And again, it's another reason I was so compelled to make the film, because without this, you could shoot a doc and stuff of her, but you want to bring her to life visually and in film with movement. And it's so limited out there what's on Mildred. It's crazy because of how culturally significant she was and everything she accomplished, to just essentially be unknown to almost everyone in today's society. It's crazy. So we're very excited for people to learn about her thanks to the movie.
And lastly, before we wrap up, so you mentioned Iron Claw. So this is the second biopic I can think of, and there may be more, but these are the major ones. Is wrestling becoming more of a genre in film?
I hope so. I mean, there's so many great stories. It's a very fascinating world, specifically the behind the scenes of it all. I've always told, I might call them like my civilian friends, the ones that aren't into pro wrestling culture. I go, look, the in-ring stuff's great. Like, that's obviously amazing, choreography. It takes incredible athleticism. It takes a lot of just skill and stunt work to be able to do that and not seriously injure your partner in the ring. But everything that goes into making the matches happen and all of the behind the scenes, all of the drama, that stuff is just so fascinating, because it really, especially in Mildred's time, it really was this outlaw world where it's not like you're dealing with the Screen Actors Guild and the studios and the academy and the directors. It's like, it was just territories and like crazy promoters and crazy performers that all had this dream, and you blur the lines of, fiction with nonfiction, like reality with scripted storytelling. And that's what makes it so interesting when you go into the behind the scenes of it all. That's why I really do recommend Dark Side of the Ring, even if you're not into pro wrestling. Just the true story, drama, and insanity that this business has had since the beginning of it. There's nothing else like it. There's nothing like pro wrestling behind the scenes, in my opinion.
It's true. I mean, people are fascinated with movies behind the scenes. It's like there's such a world, and it's like larger than life characters. I think the two are very similar. So I think that's why there is such a synergy and there's such a fascination, because there's these great over the top characters created in the ring and outside the ring and all the backstories. So it is really fun. We hope that will be the first of many more to come, and maybe we'll do more. So,
yeah, and before we go, Amy, it's March 7th. Talk to me one more time about the rollout, what people need to know, because you're kind of into that phase now, the marketing part.
Yes, we are. Well, follow us on our socials, Queen of the Ring movie, Instagram, all the Twitter, everything. And then on our website, you'll see, but it is opening March 7th across the country, multiple cities. It will be here in Jacksonville at the Regency, but it'll be in major towns all over. So just, look for Queen of the Ring and come out and support.
Well, Ash Avildsen and Amy Show, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing the movie, and we'll be talking to you soon. Good luck with the rollout.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Scott, for having us. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Well, so now that we've heard all about the movie, want to bring back friend of the show, Victoria Crawford, formerly Alicia Fox back in the day. Victoria, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Scott. Thank you so much. How are you doing?
I've been waiting to tackle this, and this is the great time to do it. Wrestlers getting into movies. Let me start. This is literally a movie, a major, probably going to be blockbuster, about women in pro wrestling from back in like the 30s and 40s. What do you think about this going on the big screen?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the crossover too for each of us, as talent, but also too, it's a nice way of telling our women's story, this history of the women, our side of the story, our perspective.
So we've got a lot of stars in this. Tony Storm, Camille, plays June Byers. She has a big role in this. I see Jim Cornette even has a role, which is fascinating. Britt Baker, Mickey James had some time. I think she was Moolah. They had to cut some of it out, but she may have more, maybe in an extended release. Is this like a big opportunity for women wrestlers, you think, to see so many of them, get a chance to do this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And again, it's a whole different platform. Like, what is it? Big movie screens. It's kind of like the ultimate dream. It's fun,
But the thing that fascinated me about this was they said, and you can probably relate, they didn't need to hire stunt people for this.
Correct.
The wrestlers can do it.
They can do it, yeah. And again, like Brett Baker, Camille, these are all talent that I've watched on TV for a long time under the wrestling storytelling, and to see them actually like really embody and play into these individual characters, which built the foundation of why we all have rings open for us to wrestle today. So it's monumental because of what the women contributed to the business, and it's monumental that these girls can do it in this timeline.
So give me a thought of like, if you're a wrestler and you showed up on a movie set and they're like, we're going to have you do this. We'll probably have to bring in a stunt person. Do you think the wrestlers are like, no, we got this. We can we can get beat up. That's no problem for them.
No problem. Smooth like butter.
So I want to know, so when you went to WWE, what year was it?
I started in 2006.
So this is right around the time Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, is getting big in Hollywood. He had some movies under his belt, and he starts right around that time taking off as like the biggest guy in Hollywood. Cena's starting. Eventually, Batista does Guardians of the Galaxy. And you start seeing wrestlers like, these are marketable people in Hollywood, more than Hulk Hogan was, back in the day. What was it like in the locker room when all the wrestlers start seeing this happen? They're like, their eyes are open like, oh my God, wrestlers are becoming big time movie stars. Was there interest? I mean, were there agents, or what was that like back then?
Oh, there definitely is interest. There's always interest in trying to get to the biggest stage. I mean, any stage, but also too, as a talent, it showed us that there's an industry outside of the ring too. So why not try it? Why not try to build another layer to our caricature, our opportunities? So it's just really nice. And then wrestling is, it's so much magic. Like, we go with the flow. We listen to the crowd. We can feel the room. So it isn't surprising that anyone would want to do their own stunts. It's going to probably bring even more of a uniqueness to the theatrics. So I think if I were a film director making this film, I think I would bank more on an individual with wrestling experience, kind of bang for your buck. Is that kind of...
Sure. Well, I guess my question is like, wrestlers, they're already photogenic. They're used to performing in front of camera. Like Dave Bautista sometimes talked about, he went to an acting coach, but he eventually got it. There's like already built in ability to perform, before you even get to a movie set?
I mean, absolutely. There's a lot of practice, but however, for myself, memorizing lines are not my strong point,
Yeah.
and I get shy on camera. Like earlier, I got real shy,
Yeah.
But
we're getting you out of your shell, by the way.
I appreciate it, Scott. It's really been fun. I love it.
But so like for you, it was, because they don't all do movies, a lot do TV. Right. And for you, it was Total Divas. What's that conversation like backstage for the performers where they're like, I'm going to go into a different world here? You're so used to go in, do your match, cut your promo, town to town, that's your life. But to go into a different world like that, what was that like?
I definitely think with any performer, it's just a change of state of mind. I mean, for instance, Total Divas was very who we were, so it wasn't really um, super dynamic to just be like, off work. That was kind of like our vibe. However, I think, again, as a performer, the storytelling aspect is so important. There were a lot of stories that we talked about on Total Divas, whether women are going through certain changes in their lives that really related to that age of women. Like, I get Total Diva fans approach all the time that were really talking about a stage in their high school experience that they related to, and then on to college and certain trinkets. But then, however, wrestling is a great lap of people who, have different, deeper rooted memories of wrestling. So some of the conversations are a little different. And I mean, I don't know, it just goes on and on and on. But the storytelling, like, I think that's one thing as a character, practicing and practicing to keep
Also,
yeah.
well, back to the rock Cena thing. So before them, wrestlers, I think it was really hard to get them. I mean, Hulk Hogan tried to become a movie star and it didn't work. Rock and Cena changed that. I mean, have you seen like agencies or agents, I don't quite know how to put it, have interest in wrestlers?
Oh,
Maybe
yeah. Well, that's absolutely. However, my experience is a little different because I just got out of a contract with the one company,
Sure.
whereas
Yeah.
certain things that I couldn't have an agent. However, today, yes, their presence being on these films and getting a lot of credibility and visibility and respect from all of us, the world, has really helped open up doors for what a wrestler with no degree. I mean, we're in a creative time, I understand, but to see what other opportunities are in this entertainment industry, the roads don't have to be narrow and winding. It seems like everyone can kind of grow and expand, but it did start with The Rock and Cena and The Miz, Total Divas. There's even, with AEW coming out, having more wrestling, it brought more light to the other independents, TNA. And then, so it'll be interesting to see what happens next, especially with the women being able to tell the female story.
And I was excited to see, so like Britt Baker and Toni Storm and Camille and Naomi, all in this, they're kind of all active wrestlers. Mickie James, I was kind of excited to see that she's not active on camera a lot right now, but they're still going. It's nice to see that it's just not someone who's actively with a company. You know what I mean? That people of different generations, they still know their star power there.
Yeah, totally. And especially like the Brett Bakers and Camille, big fan of their wrestling. And I can't wait to be a fan of their acting.
And they were telling me a lot that Camille was like, her star was shining in this.
Yeah. She has star power for sure. I noticed her. I was like, I love her. Jordan Grace, I was like, I love her. Like during the pandemic, that's when I got to see. I was like, wow, there's so much wrestling out there. Brett Bakers, love her.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we go, I got to ask you, you were recently out on the West Coast up in British Columbia. Tell me about the show up there.
Oh, it was so fun. So I was with All Star Wrestling out of Vancouver, and I wrestled Rhea Vaughn, and she and I really meshed well because we understood how to tell the story because she's been wrestling 16 years. And then we just kind of, and she's really established in that city. So I just kind of brought some things that maybe I had in my back pocket.
I interrupt you.
Yeah.
This is intriguing because I've always been fascinated by this. So she's established in that city, and I always hear about like back in the day, WWE star goes into the territory, goes against like the hometown hero or heroine. What's that? What is that kind of what was going on there?
Yeah.
Everyone knew her?
Exactly. You totally get it. So my new character, Victor Crow, I went into her territory, and their story is they have this championship title that's up for grabs, right? So got wrapped up in the story there. So we had a match and we kept, pointing to the importance of the championship because the city now sees, oh, okay, there could be any star to come, anyone on the independents, anyone that's able to travel and do work in the independents. Hopefully I can demonstrate a door that can open for them too. That's where I'm seeing kind of trying to parallel with the Cena and the Rock and things. Cause maybe one day acting may call, who knows,
Exactly. Yeah.
Wrestling.
So they may be calling you for the sequel. You'll just have to wait and see. Maybe a Moolah biopic or something like that.
Hello? Cool.
You're there. Victoria's here. By the way, the producers and directors are watching this episode, so she's available. She's available. Well, Victoria, thanks for joining us on this episode. We're going to see you back here in not too long, I'm sure. So thanks, Victoria. And of course, Ash and Amy, the producer and director for this monumental movie, which will put women's wrestling in a light it's never really been shown before to the national audience, to probably eventually the global audience. March 7th is the debut date. If you're in our area in Jacksonville, it'll be shown at the Regency Square Cinema, so check it out there. And of course, check your local listings for where it will be. If you're watching from out of our area, but very excited about this one, so hope you go see it. I'll definitely be seeing it myself. So thanks for joining us for this episode of Going Ringside. I'm your host, Scott Johnson, and we'll see you back here next time.
This has been Going Ringside with The Local Station, brought to you every Wednesday on your favorite podcast player, on News4 Jax Plus, as well as the News4 Jax YouTube channel.